and welcome back to another episode of Notes from School, the podcast. It's your weekly assembly with me, James B. Partridge, or today, Mr. Partridge. It's been a busy old week. I hope you've had a good one. We're getting closer to the Easter holidays. I hope you can feel the taste of freedom in the air. The clocks have changed. The sun is out. The blossom is on all the trees. So I feel like we're feeling a little bit more spring-like. And I've just got back from Sheffield. So it's been a busy week. So I've been up in Yorkshire for a few shows, but also I went up to the northeast as well. So I had a gig in Selby at the town hall there, and in Otley at the courthouse, the old courthouse. And then from Otley, I left early in the morning. And by the way, I stayed over in this amazing... Normally, the hotels I stay in when I'm doing my gigs are, kind of the basic Holiday Inns or like a room above a pub type thing. And I thought I couldn't actually find anything, first of all, in Otley. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to look slightly further out. And then I booked this place, which is called Goldborough Hall, which was like really nice. And I was very luckily given an upgrade in the room as well, which is the first time that's ever happened, because the person came to the show the night before and they said, I really enjoyed it, give you an upgrade, which was amazing. So shout out to Goldborough Hall. And anyway, I went from there to and I drove up north the next morning to Gateshead, and it was the day of the Newcastle United parade in town in the Toon. And from the Glasshouse venue that I was playing, we could see the drone show above the town. And from all accounts and what people were showing me on Sky News, it was a lot of fun that day. If you were out in the parade in Newcastle, I hope you had a good time. So I did two shows on Saturday. I did a matinee and an evening show. And the matinee show, I did have a number of people in Newcastle United shirts. And a little known fact is I'm not a massive football follower now. Unlike my brothers, I've got three brothers and they're all big football fans, especially my youngest brother Will, who is a diehard fan of Bournemouth. And but anyway, growing up, I was, for some reason, despite growing up in Poole, which is one of the furthest towns in England from Newcastle, I think, I was a Newcastle United fan. I think it was coming off the days of Alan Shearer. So I had the Newcastle United shirts. I played in goal when I was at school. And had a Newcastle United away kit, a goalie kit. There we go. That was my niche kind of link to Newcastle United. But over time, I kind of got more into music and less into sports and football. But anyway, so Gateshead was amazing energy and crowd. And then the next morning, I drove. I got back to. I took a bit of a downgrade after Saturday night, and I stayed in a motorway side hotel, which was fine. It was fine. But anyway, that I got a few hours sleep, and the next morning I went to Sheffield and did a couple of shows for Concerteenies. And this episode is actually going to be based around an interview that I did with Polly Ives, who runs Concerteenies. And it's a really interesting chat all about early years music and providing music for children and parents. And Truffles, my cat, by the way, the video is going to shake just then because Truffles, my cat, was rubbing her face on the phone holder. And by the way, if you haven't known this, all of these episodes I put up on YouTube as well. So if you'd rather watch the videos than listen, if you'd rather watch the podcast and listen to it, then you can head over to YouTube if you search up James B. Partridge. But anyway, yeah, the chat with Polly was really great. We're talking about the importance of early music education. I asked her about Concerteenies, the company she set up, and music in schools and homes, and maybe even where we might see the future of education. And she also gives a few tips for parents who might be thinking about how they can incorporate a bit of music into the lives of their young children. But yeah, so Concerteenies, this is a a company. This is a kind of organisation that puts on all sorts of concerts, and they even won Royal Philharmonic Society's Inspiration Award in 2020 for their innovative lockdown work. And I used to actually work for the Royal I can't even say it. RPS is what we say. The Royal Philharmonic Society. I worked for them for a while back about 2012, 2013. So I know how important those awards are. But anyway, I'm not going to do a question and answer today because we're going to get straight into the interview. And even if you don't have children, even if you're not in music education, I think you might find this chat really interesting about how we can form communities within communities through music. And I'm going to get straight to the interview now before my cat knocks over all this recording equipment. But thank you so much to everybody that's come to one of my shows this week. I've got only one this week coming up, and that's in Braintree. I think there's a couple of tickets left. If you live in Essex and you want to come along to that one. And then it's the Easter holidays. Got a bit of time off. But next week's episode, I'm sure, will be about Easter bangers. At the end of the interview, I do ask Polly what her favourite Easter banger is, and she didn't have one specifically, but I suggested Lord of the Dance could be one. If you have a favourite Easter banger, feel free to write in to notesfromschoolpodcast@gmail.com. Or send me a message on Instagram or leave a comment under the podcasts on Spotify. And by the way, if you enjoyed these podcasts, please, if you have 2 seconds after listening to it, just tap a review. It's going to really help with visibility for it. And already this podcast has been in the top 10. It was number 10, I think, number 9 actually, I think, in the music podcast in the UK. But I'd love for people to keep discovering this. So without further ado, let's invite Polly Ives into the Assembly Hall to speak to us today all about early years music and music for children. All right, welcome to Notes from School, the podcast. It is Polly from Concerteenies. Hello, welcome into the Assembly Hall.
Thank you very much.
So we have just finished 2 Concerteenies performances this morning, which was so much fun. We're in the back room of a pub in Sheffield, which is the perfect place for a children's performance. And you've been performing here with Concerteenies for quite a long time, haven't you? Do you mind just telling the listeners how you started Concerteenies? Where did it all start from?
Yeah, so I've been working in music education outreach work for 24 years. And that has always been about encouraging all ages of people to just get involved in music. So in theatres and outreach work, through concert promoters and orchestras. But when I had my first child, 5 months into having a child, I decided to set up Concerteenies just because I felt like there was such a massive gap of opportunities for families to go to live events, go to gigs, go to concerts, hear live music, and actually even just go to the pub, meet friends, socialise,
Very
relax.
important. Get down the pub with the children. That's fine.
It is, and actually just the chance to experience something new and different with their child, alongside their child. So I set it up in 2017. I tried it all out with lots of my parent new mum friends and NCT group, and kind of just built on it from there. But it was a real hit straight away, and people were so keen on enjoying music together alongside their little ones. And it's been an incredible, really exciting time since then.
That's amazing. And this room is a room that you might expect to maybe see a rock band or a folk band or something. And you do actually, I mean, what I do is quite child music friendly, and even though it's mostly music shows that I do for adults. But what kind of other acts do you have doing Concerteenies?
Well, we try to go for a really broad mix. So the Greystones back room is our founding venue. We do monthly Greystones gigs here. So those are folk, jazz, pop. But the idea for these is very much that you can ideally see an artist or an act that you can no longer go and see, because often in the evening tickets are expensive when we're a bit strapped. Babysitting's really expensive. You just don't even know if you'll make it. Late, you're stressed, it's too long, you need to be asleep by 9 because your baby will be up halfway in the night anyway. So it was about bringing live gigs, proper concerts, but just do it in the daytime. In fact, someone said to me, it was 11 o'clock in the morning. She was like, oh, that's the best night out I've had in years.
Yes.
So it's like, that is it. That is it.
I think someone said the same thing to me last night. I was in Gateshead last night, and I did 2 shows, one at 2 o'clock and one at 8. And the people that came to 2 o'clock said, oh, that's so good. That was my night out. I can go home and just have a night in now. I've had a night out. Now I can have a night in.
Brilliant.
But that's great. So we had 2 shows this morning. One was at 9:45.
Yeah.
We were unfortunately slightly messed around by the clock change, which meant we had a bit less sleep than usual. But I felt like it was a very energetic room this morning.
It was.
From everyone working at Concerteenies and also all the children here. But I was wondering, you do sometimes, working with children, as I've known from being a teacher, you do sometimes get some interesting reactions and opinions. Has there been any, I don't know, funny or unexpected reactions from any of the children that have come along to the Concerteenies?
Well, I suppose often a reaction is just of absolute kind of wow and wonder. And it just blows my mind to think, imagine what it must be like to hear a piano for the very first time or a room full of singing. So just overall, just absolute awe and amazement and just wow. I often get a lot of children when they walk in going, whoa, you're in real life. How did you get out of the TV?
Oh, wow.
Because we often, a lot of our schools concerts and musical stories and libraries and tours, we prepare videos like you to make it accessible, to kind of bring together the kind of digital world of learning. We support teachers by sending out activity packs that link to the curriculum and then a video learning the songs. So they will have watched the films before. So it's,
Did you send out a lot during lockdown as well?
We did. Yeah. We did. We dabbled, I'd say, during lockdown. It wasn't my favourite thing because it was very much ours as Concerteenies really focuses on that live interaction, community connection with people.
It's so tough, isn't it? Because you want the children to have that visceral experience of being in a room with other children and other parents and things, and just feeling music for the first time, as if they're going to a rock gig of their own. At that age, and it doesn't quite translate as well online. But as I could tell earlier, it was. I mean, people were dancing, people were singing. I mean, there were very small children here as well. We had
a 4-week-old.
We had a
4-week-old in today.
that is a good age to start, being around live music and people singing. And who knows, there might be some kind of memories when they've grown up. They might think, I don't know, in the back of their mind, they might have heard these songs before. But why do you think it's important to introduce music to children at this early stage of their life?
I think if you crack it in the early years, children are set up, or their parents especially, are set up for a lifelong relationship with music. I think the more we can normalise music, access from birth. That 4-week-old, we know it's proven by research that children absorb the music, they feel the heartbeat inside the womb, they start to naturally feel rhythm and rhyme through talking and vocal sounds. Being musical and feeling musical are so important. And actually, there's another reason why I set up Concerteenies, because I found that there was so much activity very early on. If you get hooked into being a football family or a dancing family, or if the parents aren't there right ready thinking this is something we do, that actually if you then try and teach an instrument at age 8, if you haven't got all of those foundations of music, in all of the rich learning elements of music, in your session this morning, you're introducing rhythm and pulse and walking, marching in time, the pitch of ups, highs and lows for the different songs. You're singing in 2-part harmony. You've learned so much of the curriculum's interrelated elements of music, right, really early on, but in such a fun way.
But not in a dry way. Yeah, exactly. Not in a dry way. So you're not saying this is meter, this is rhythm, this is whatever. It's all kind of interwoven in songs that they might find quite catchy or whatever. And that's what we kind of said just now in terms of like that experience of being in a room with people at that young age, because they can feel it in their bodies. It's not just something they're listening to. They can march along, they can clap along, they can interact with a toy or whatever, a bouncing ball or whatever they've got, or a ribbon. That we had the ribbons for Who Put the Colours in the Rainbow.
Yes.
And do you get many of the children coming multiple times to the Concerteenies?
Yeah, we have a really regular audience. One of the things that has been really exciting is that 2 years ago today, we became a charity, and we can now take, with funding, we can now take this similar kind of activity across Sheffield, across South Yorkshire, and around the UK, actually more and more now. So it means that everybody can access this kind of activity, and we're now starting to see people who try out things at the library in a particular area of the city, so it's free, or in a family hub. We also go into the neonatal ward at the Children's Hospital, and we start to see families connecting across the city, so that we can make things really hyper-local for people within. I was at an Arts Council meeting the other day, and we were talking about pushchair proximity, that, if it's right on your doorstep, you feel like it's what you do around local people. So people come really regularly, and that's brilliant as well, because again, people trust what we do. They trust the different styles of music. Yep. They'll give jazz a go. They'll hear some global folk fusion music, and they're just really trusting that they and their children will enjoy and benefit and be uplifted by the sessions.
And they're being exposed to all sorts of different musics, which is amazing, because quite often you might just listen to one type of music that your parents like, so actually you're giving them lots of different experiences. And I really like that idea of having that pushchair proximity, because you're essentially kind of building up communities within communities in a way, which is really great. And at a time when so much is online and so many supposed communities are online, and people are actually getting disconnected in the real world in a lot of ways. So that's really fantastic. And how do you kind of connect with the parents as well? Because obviously there are so many musical benefits for the children at these concerts, but do you find there's much of a benefit for the parents and the caregivers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working quite a lot on our plan recently and how we get across what we do and why. So one of the elements in our vision is about musical development, but the other three are about using music for all-round early years development that we'll talk about in a bit, but also about well-being and wonder. So for parents, if we use music as a slightly more subtle way, but we use music as a tool to make people feel good about themselves and to draw connections in their own lives. So certainly music for relaxation. A lot of our babies' concerts in the family hubs, we start with about 10 minutes of improvisation. So the musicians just improvise, because we work with amazing musicians who are just totally brilliant. And real musicians like yourself. It's so important. But we do have lights down, and you can just chill and relax and not worry about what your child does, but just listen, zone out for a bit, genuinely listen as well, that active listening. We know that it slows down your heart rate. We know a lot of the benefits for the for your neuroscience, those feel-good endorphins, for just feeling connected to other people and to your child.
I think improvisation is quite an exciting thing as well, because I think a lot of people experience music as a child through exams. Yeah. And actually having that kind of interesting interactive and improvisational element to it is so important. And, there's obviously a lot of benefits to doing exams, but having that other musical experience, I think, is going to be really beneficial for young children, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it brings meaning to your actual life. A lot of children are motivated by achievement and certificates. We know that children love a certificate or
Absolutely.
A sticker.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant as well. Keep motivated and keep feeling like you're learning something.
If there's someone listening to this that is a parent but doesn't have access to an experience like this, how would you recommend they go about incorporating music into their daily life of their children?
I think the first absolute key is understanding the value of music for your child and yourself, and just that whole feeling of that perception that listening to music is just fun, relaxing, a great equalizer. You know, it is accessible. Radio on, choosing different radio stations. In the car, we often, if we're doing lots of long journeys, we'll just do song choosing, and then each of us take a turn. Mm-hmm. And the boys, my two children, love doing that, and they actually do listen to the whole song and wait for their next song, and it's a real variety of music.
I think that's great, and then you can they can always, you know, clap along or sing along, or maybe they can make up their own lyrics. They can do a bit of improvising themselves.
Definitely.
Okay, would you say, I don't know, are there any kind of common misconceptions about early music education that you'd like to kind of clarify or clear up? Or, I don't know, I think some people might just not think that it's important. I don't know.
Definitely. I definitely think that's true. And actually, even within the national curriculum and the funding for the arts, I think early years music has kind of been seen as the little sister. You know, it's having a bit of a fun play, and actually play is vital for learning.
Yeah.
And if we give the early years the very best start in life, that has absolute proven benefits for how children learn, how children are confident.
I think it's quite hard to sometimes kind of I'm asking you so many questions right now. I think it is hard to kind of quantify sometimes something like play and how beneficial that can be, but also thinking about the pipeline of early years music into people becoming musicians. And we even had Ed Sheeran last week talking about the importance of music education, and it's got to start from somewhere. So first of all, you've got to have the funding, but it's got to start from that early age as well. Do you see the role of music in early years education evolving somehow, maybe hopefully increasing in schools? Yeah,
I think there has been a rapid growth in understanding how important it is. Now the music curriculum, last year they brought in far more music within early years in the EYFS. Music hubs are starting to recognise more the role of music and how they can work in partnership with early years music providers. The Arts Council, Youth Music are funding a lot more activity with very young children. So I think we're at a really exciting time for far more and accessible music education.
That's great. I mean, it's good to have a positive spin on it, because I mean, it's quite so often, especially with music, it always seems kind of doom and gloom, isn't it? It's like, oh, we don't have any funding, you know, things are so hard, people aren't singing anymore, this kind of stuff. So it's great to have a positive message coming out of that. And what are your next exciting plans for Concerteenies? Do you have any plans for expansion? I mean, you've kind of touched on it a little bit with the things you were talking about earlier. But.
Yeah, I think our big focus is making it as accessible to people as possible, and more activity so that it becomes a regular thing that people do. We're working in partnership with London Philharmonic Orchestra and London Mozart Players on our big orchestral concert, Stan and Mabel and the Race for Space. So I present those. We have big image projections, loads of participation. It's based on a story. So we're touring that. We're touring other musical stories this year to venues around the UK. More in the hospitals. And we're building towards, we're one of the major partners for a new music education venue in Sheffield called Harmony Works.
Amazing.
And that will be a real central hub, a really exciting space to bring music education to life for people across South Yorkshire as well.
It's so great. And I kind of feel like, because I live in London, but I tour around the country, and I feel like, especially when people think about, I don't know, government funding, they might think it's all quite London-centric. So it's amazing to hear, you know, stories of incredible music happening around the UK, and especially in a city like Sheffield, which is such a city that's known for its music, in with so many amazing bands and musicians that have come out of here and the university and everything. Also, if you're a musician listening to this and you want to get involved, I'm sure you'd take submissions from people that want to play, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just want that for professional musicians to feel like they can perform to any kind of audience as well, just to have that confidence to play to young people. And we work with a lot of musicians who don't regularly play to this age, but actually if we can help shape just the feel of the event, we can add in these sensory elements to keep the children happy. It's a really, everyone actually who plays through Concerteenies has always really loved it, because it's given that really fresh, you get a really great reaction and far more smiley faces looking back at you than a normal evening kind of gig often.
Well, there's a new side to it. And even for me, even though these songs are children's songs, most of them that I perform, pretty much all the shows that I do are for adults.
Yeah.
So unless I'm at a festival or something, or a matinee show where you might get some more children, but it was really great for me to perform this morning to a room of such a mixed stage. And kind of an interesting thing, you're just talking about the sensory elements as well. I guess you might get some children that actually connect a lot better using tactile things like glow balls or ribbons or whatever it might be, shakers, percussion instruments, and actually not every child or even adult kind of experiences music in the same way. So having that extra element, I think, was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's 45 minutes, and a lot of the time people are nervous about if they think their child
quite long,
will sit
45
still.
minutes. Yeah.
But because we look at the structure of a session. Often we try and have a variety of faster, lively pieces, a calm, cuddly one.
We did Kumbaya for the cuddly one.
And definitely those visual elements that they're so used to, the bubbles and Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, just brings a different sensory, keeps them interested, changes it all up. So keeps them.
And I felt like, obviously they are very young children, but I felt like it wasn't patronizing, because I feel like
definitely
you can get children's education in music that feels a bit patronizing.
Definitely.
And it felt quite immersive throughout the experience of my show, and I didn't feel like I was dumbing down my show or anything.
No.
I was basically doing the same show with a couple of extra songs that are slightly more child friendly, but I thought that was really great. But
there is something though that I was at a marketing and PR conference the other day about adults take in so much in the day, especially with online information, that actually you really want to pitch even to adults to about 7 the kind of language that you'd use with a 7-year-old.
Oh, right, okay.
And it just made me think that actually we need to be direct when we present to adults. You've got to have a clear story, clear message, say it with conviction, not waffle, which I'm doing now, but to get that across. And actually, if we can talk like that in a friendly, accessible, welcoming manner, you don't have to change much for the way you speak. And
it works it would work for any age, whether they're 2 years old or 80. Actually, it can work for so many different ages.
I'd like to see you do children's gigs for all of yours now in future.
There we go. That'll be the mission. I mean, it'd be quite tiring. I mean, I'm impressed that you've made it through this interview, as we've both got up very early this morning. We've done 2 shows, as well as the 2 shows I did yesterday. But I mean, I'd love to do more for all ages and families and things. But I now have a very important question for you. Do you have a favourite school assembly banger or school assembly hymn?
Oh, that's so hard. That is so hard.
There are so many.
There are so many. And actually today when you were each next song, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I heard lots of other people. Yes. I mean, I do. I absolutely love Give Me All in My Lamp, particularly. I grew up in a little village, and there wasn't much to do in the village other than the church group and with music. And my mum and dad and my sister used to play in the church band, and so many of those bring back so many memories.
Did you play in the church band?
No, I didn't. I played the cello, and so they were on clarinet and sax, and my dad played bass guitar in it as well. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know. Yeah.
We're coming up to Easter now. Is there an Easter banger?
No.
No. Okay.
I was thinking that earlier.
Yeah, because there are some newer Easter songs,
Yeah.
like Spring Chicken and various other things. But the one that I do in my show is Lord of the Dance, which is the classic. I feel like that's got to be the number one Easter hymn.
Yes.
But I mean, there's quite a lot of Easter hymns which are great. But I'm glad that one went down well.
It went down really well.
I try and with the show, I try and go through the school year. I've got the Autumn Harvest Festival and the Easter tunes and all that sort of stuff. But honestly, it was so much fun, and thank you so much for reaching out, because you actually first emailed me like 2 years ago, I think.
I did.
2023,
yeah. I'd seen you on during COVID online, and I came to your Christmas one with some friends, and I just knew it would work really well, and just again so keen for parents to be able to experience it without having to come out in the evening. So it was just brilliant, and thank you so much for
they had the night out, and now they can have the rest of Mother's Day to chill out and hopefully enjoy the rest of the day. But okay, well, thank you so much for joining us in the school hall on the Notes from School podcast. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, on all the socials and websites. Concerteenies, we call it little concerts for little people. Concerteenies.com.
What a fantastic way to get children involved in music. Thank you so much, Polly.
Thank you.
There we go. That's today's interview, and that is today's podcast. I think I'm going to save the sing-alongs for next week, actually, because I do like to end the podcast on a bit of a sing-along. But next week's episode, we're going to have a bumper episode with all sorts of Easter hymns, Easter bangers, Spring Chicken, Lord of the Dance, anything you can think of. Let me know whether it's a traditional hymn or a newer assembly song. I'd love for you to suggest some Easter tunes for me to feature on the episode next week. So thanks again for joining me in the assembly hall. It's been a pleasure as always to have you, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. I really enjoyed doing the gigs in Sheffield, and hopefully I can do more. Hopefully I can do some more episodes for parents and children. And actually, there's been a lot of negative press at the moment about I don't know, around kind of children, especially with this show called Adolescence that a lot of people are watching. I haven't actually seen it yet, but hopefully music can be a great way to give people a positive focus, give children a positive focus as well. But there we go. Let's leave it there, and keep on smiling, keep singing. See you next week for another episode of Notes from School Easter Edition.